It was a foggy morning in late October 1928 when the cargo ship SS Vanderbilt set sail from New York Harbor. The ship wasn't particularly large, but it carried both coal and a small number of passengers seeking passage across the Atlantic. The crew was experienced, and the passengers were eager, unaware of the storm that would soon turn their voyage into a nightmare. By the second night, the fog had thickened, and the sea grew restless. The waves lashed against the hull, and the wind howled like a living thing. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, whispering about strange noises coming from the cargo hold. Doors creaked open on their own, and lifeboats were mysteriously found swinging in midair, even though no one had touched them. One young passenger, Thomas Whitaker, noted how the shadows on deck seemed to move independently. He told the ship's captain, who laughed it off, until he heard faint voices echoing from the empty hallways below deck. No one else was there, but the voices continued, whispering names no one recognized. As night fell, an unnatural chill settled over the ship. The lights flickered, and several crew members reported seeing figures darting across the deck. By midnight, panic was quietly spreading among those aboard. Something was not right. Something was hunting them, not the storm, but something else, unseen and unstoppable. The ship, which had seemed ordinary at departure, was now a vessel suspended between the living and the unknown. And for the passengers and crew, the nightmare was only beginning. By the third night, the storm had grown relentless. Waves crashed against the SS Vanderbilt with terrifying force, each udar seeming stronger than the last. The crew struggled to maintain control, but something far worse than the storm had already taken hold of the ship. It began quietly. A crew member named Harris was sent below deck to check the cargo. He never returned. At first, no one thought much of it, until another sailor went looking for him and came back pale, shaking. "There's no one there," he whispered. "But I heard him, calling my name." The cargo hold was searched. Harris was gone. No signs of struggle. No open doors. Nothing. Panic started to spread. Not long after, a passenger, a woman traveling alone, vanished from her cabin. Her belongings were still neatly placed on the bed, as if she had simply stepped out, but she was never seen again. The door had been locked from the inside. By midnight, fear had taken over the ship. Strange things were happening everywhere. Footsteps echoed through empty corridors. Shadows moved along the walls even when no one was there. The lights flickered constantly, plunging parts of the ship into complete darkness for seconds at a time. Then came the sound that no one could explain. A deep, dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the deck. The captain ordered everyone to stay inside, but it was too late. Another crew member disappeared, then another. And with each disappearance, the ship felt heavier. As if it was no longer just carrying coal and passengers, but something else. Something that was slowly taking control. And somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes were watching, waiting for the next victim. The fourth night aboard the SS Vanderbilt was unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. The storm had not passed, it had only grown stronger, as if the ship itself was being dragged deeper into something far worse than the open sea. No one slept anymore. The remaining passengers huddled together in the main hall, whispering prayers and staring at the flickering lights above them. The crew, once confident and disciplined, now moved nervously, checking doors that would not stay closed and listening to sounds they could not explain. Then it happened. A loud crash echoed from the lower deck. Two sailors rushed down to investigate, their lanterns barely cutting through the darkness. What they found would haunt the rest of their lives. One of the missing crew members lay on the floor, motionless. There were no clear injuries. No blood. No signs of a struggle. But his face, his expression was frozen in pure terror, as if he had seen something no human mind could comprehend. They tried to carry the body back upstairs, but suddenly, the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. In that silence, they heard it again. That dragging sound. Closer this time. Slower. Deliberate. One of the sailors began to panic, shouting into the darkness. The other tried to calm him down, but then, something moved behind them. Not a person. Not an animal. Something else. A shadow, taller than any man, slid across the wall without a sound. The terrified sailor dropped the body and ran. He never made it back. When the lights finally returned, only one man came back to the main deck, shaking, unable to speak. The others were gone. By dawn, the ship was no longer the same. Half the crew had vanished. The passengers were breaking down. And the captain, once calm and in control, locked himself in his cabin, refusing to come out. The storm still raged outside. But inside the SS Vanderbilt, something far more dangerous had awakened. And it was no longer hiding. By the fifth day, the SS Vanderbilt was barely holding together. The storm had not stopped, but it was no longer the biggest problem. There were fewer people left now. Too few. The remaining crew gathered near the captain's cabin, desperate for answers. After hours of knocking, shouting, and even threatening to break the door down, the captain finally opened it. He looked different, pale, exhausted, like a man who had already accepted his fate. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said quietly. The room fell silent. "This cargo, it's not just coal." The crew exchanged uneasy glances as the captain explained. Before departure, a sealed crate had been loaded onto the ship under strict orders. No one was allowed to open it. No questions asked. It came from an unknown source, with documents that didn't fully match any official record. At first, no one cared. Ships carried strange cargo all the time. But now it made sense. The whispers, the shadows, the disappearances. The captain led a small group of crew members down into the cargo hold. The air grew colder with every step. Their breath became visible, and the silence felt heavy, unnatural. Then they saw it. The crate. It stood alone in the center of the hold, massive, dark, and covered in markings no one could understand. Symbols carved deep into the wood, as if they had been scratched in desperation. And it was open. No one had given the order. No one admitted touching it. Yet the lid now hung slightly ajar. From inside, a faint sound echoed. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. A whisper. One of the crew members stepped closer, unable to resist. As he leaned in, the whisper grew louder, forming words he couldn't quite understand, but somehow felt were meant only for him. "Don't," another sailor said, his voice trembling. Too late. The man reached out and touched the edge of the crate. In that instant, the lanterns flickered violently. The temperature dropped even further. And from within the darkness of the crate, something moved. Fast. The man screamed, but the sound was cut short. The others stumbled back in horror as the crate slammed shut on its own. When they dared to look again, he was gone. No blood, no trace, only silence. The crew now understood the truth. Whatever was inside that crate was no longer trapped. And the SS Vanderbilt was not just a ship anymore. It had become a prison. By the sixth night, the SS Vanderbilt had become a floating nightmare. The storm outside was finally beginning to weaken, but inside the ship, terror had reached its peak. Only a handful of people remained. The rest were gone. No bodies, no answers, just silence, and that presence that could be felt in every corner of the ship. The survivors knew one thing: they had to leave. The captain, now barely holding himself together, ordered the remaining crew to prepare the last lifeboat. It was their only chance. The sea was still dangerous, but staying on the ship meant certain death. As they moved across the deck, the air felt thick and heavy. Every step echoed too loudly. Every shadow seemed alive. Then, that sound returned. Dragging. Slow. Closer than ever. Everyone froze. "Don't run," the captain whispered. "Stay together." But fear had already taken control. One of the passengers panicked and sprinted toward the lifeboat. He didn't make it. Something shot across the deck faster than the eye could follow. A dark shape, impossibly tall, wrapped around him. For a split second, his scream cut through the wind, then silence. He was gone. The rest stood frozen, unable to move, barely able to breathe. Now they had seen it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to know, this was no human. The survivors rushed to the lifeboat, their hands shaking as they tried to lower it into the violent sea. The ropes creaked, the boat began to descend, then suddenly, the rope snapped. The lifeboat crashed into the water below and flipped instantly, swallowed by the waves. Their last chance, gone. Behind them, the ship groaned loudly, as if something inside it was shifting, awakening even more. The lights went out completely. Darkness consumed everything. And in that darkness, they were no longer alone. One by one, they could hear breathing. Not their own. Something was standing among them. Something that had been waiting for this exact moment. The darkness on the SS Vanderbilt was no longer just the absence of light. It felt alive. The remaining survivors stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. The storm outside had almost completely stopped, but inside the ship, something had fully awakened. Then, slowly, the emergency lights flickered back on. Dim, red, unnatural, and in that weak glow, they finally saw it. At the far end of the deck stood a figure. Tall, thin, twisted in a way no human body should be. Its limbs seemed too long, bending at unnatural angles. Its surface wasn't solid, it shifted constantly, like smoke trying to take form. And where its face should have been, there was nothing. Only darkness. One of the survivors let out a quiet sob. "It's been watching us." The captain stepped forward, his fear now replaced by a desperate determination. "No," he said. It came with the crate. As if it understood, the thing began to move. Not walking, gliding, closer. With every movement, the temperature dropped. Frost began forming on the metal railings. The survivors backed away slowly, but there was nowhere left to run. Then the whispers returned. But this time, they were clear. Each person heard something different. Voices of loved ones, friends, people they had lost, calling them, begging them to come closer. One by one, their will began to break. A young crew member stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "Mother, no," the captain shouted. But it was too late. The moment the man got close, the thing expanded, its shape stretching unnaturally, and in an instant, he vanished. Gone. Consumed without a trace. The survivors now understood the truth. This was not just a creature. It fed on them, on their fear, on their minds, and it was getting stronger. The captain turned to the last few remaining people. "There's only one way to stop it." His eyes moved toward the lower deck. Toward the crate. "If it came from there, maybe we can send it back." The ship creaked loudly, as if resisting the idea. The thing paused, then suddenly rushed forward with terrifying speed. The final chase had begun. The final chase through the SS Vanderbilt had begun. The survivors ran through narrow corridors, their footsteps echoing as the red emergency lights flickered above them. Behind them, it moved, fast, silent, unstoppable. The captain led the way down to the cargo hold. "To the crate," he shouted. The air grew freezing cold as they descended. Their breath turned to mist. The whispers were louder now, almost deafening, trying to confuse them, to break them. "Turn back, you can't escape," but they kept going. When they reached the cargo hold, the crate stood exactly where it had been, waiting. Open. Darkness inside it seemed deeper than anything they had ever seen. Not just empty, but endless. The captain turned to the others. "We don't have time. When it comes, we push it back in." Before anyone could respond, the lights went out again. Complete darkness. Then, it was there. Right behind them. A sudden cold wave hit them, and one of the survivors was instantly pulled into the darkness, vanishing without a sound. "Now!" the captain yelled. The remaining two grabbed a heavy metal chain lying nearby. As the creature moved closer, its shape shifting violently, they threw the chain forward, wrapping it around its form. For a moment, it resisted. The air screamed. The whispers turned into a deafening roar. But together, with everything they had left, they pulled. Slowly, inch by inch, the creature was dragged toward the crate. It fought back, stretching, twisting, almost breaking free, until suddenly, the captain made a decision. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, and jumped straight into the darkness of the crate, pulling the creature with him. "Close it," he shouted one last time. The two survivors slammed the lid shut. Instant silence. The whispers stopped. The cold faded. Everything was still. By morning, the storm had completely passed. A nearby ship discovered the SS Vanderbilt drifting alone in the open sea. When they boarded it, they found it empty. No crew. No passengers. Only two survivors, sitting in silence, unable to explain what had happened. And in the cargo hold, the crate. Closed. Sealed once again. But as rescuers prepared to leave the ship, one of them paused. He turned slowly toward the crate. For a brief moment, he thought he heard something. A faint whisper. From inside. Some say the ship was taken out of service soon after. Others claim the crate was moved, somewhere else. But one thing remains certain. Somewhere out there, it is still waiting.